With the economy in trouble, communities in crisis, and people adrift in a sea of moral relativism, we need God's help. That's why I'm calling on Americans to pray and fast like Jesus did, and as God called the Israelites to do. I sincerely hope you'll join me in Houston on August the 6th and take your place in Reliant Stadium with praying people, asking God's forgiveness, His wisdom and provision for our state and nation.
Welcome back to Harvard. That was, of course, Governor Rick Perry, we're all getting to know, inviting Americans to participate in The Response, a day of prayer and fasting tomorrow in Texas, in Houston, in fact. Civil liberties groups are in Texas protesting the event, saying that Perry's religious revival blurs the line between the separation of church and state. Critics also point out that some of the groups organizing the event hold extreme right-wing positions on gay rights and other issues. Joining me right now is Tony Perkins, the president of the Family Research Council, and Barry Lynn, the executive director of Americans United for Separation of Church and State. What do you make of the participants in this, Tony Perkins? Thanks for coming on, by the way, sir. What do you make of these participants like Brian Fisher, Reverend Hagee, Mike Bickle? What do you make of these characters?
Well, first, let me just thank you for bringing my old friend Barry Lynn and I back together. We had a chance to visit in the green room. It's been a few years since we've been together. And I think that actually makes the point when you look at who's going to be on the stage tomorrow, that there's a lot of diversity when you look at, kind of evangelical denominations. I'm Southern Baptist. Richard Land's a Southern Baptist. We have a lot of theological differences of opinion with some of those who will be there tomorrow. But we all share one thing in common. We have an Orthodox view of Christianity. And we're coming together for one thing, not to make speeches, not to even preach, but rather simply to pray for the nation.
Well, Barry, I want you to respond to this. Here's Reverend, it's Brian Fisher. He's with the American Family Association. Let's hear what he has to say.
Hitler discovered that he could not get straight soldiers to be savage and brutal and vicious enough, but that homosexual soldiers basically had no limits in the savagery and brutality they were willing to inflict on whoever Hitler sent them after. Permits, in my judgment, should not be granted to build even one more mosque in the United States of America, not one. We ought to be done with the building of mosques in the United States of America. President Obama is half white and half black. Herman Cain is all black. He's authentically black. He is the real black man in the race. That's why President Barack Obama nurtures this hatred for the United States of America, and I believe nurtures a hatred for the white man.
Barry, what do you make of this character?
Well, this is really fringe material. And, of course, Governor Perry shouldn't be calling on people in Texas or around the country to come to a Christian-only prayer rally, which is exactly how this started. The diversity that Tony Perkins talks about, by the way, does not include anyone who is Muslim, anyone who is Jewish. The only way they're invited to even come tomorrow is so they can learn about Jesus. In other words, this is now government evangelism sponsored by the I think government evangelism, by the way, is an oxymoron. Mr. Fisher, on the other hand, is not some guy who lives in his basement and who writes obscure blog postings. This is a guy employed by the American Family Association, the key lead sponsor of this event, chosen, recruited by the governor to do this event, whether it's a success or a failure. Okay. So when people sometimes say, well, it's guilt by association, no, this is guilt by construction. The governor decided who he wanted to lead it, and he got just what he wanted, these people on the far fringes of even conservative Christianity.
Tony, your response to the fact that the sponsoring organization was just spoken for by that wingnut we just heard from, who's saying gays are butchers and he didn't want any Islamic religion practice in this country and a lot of other far-out stuff. He's the sponsor of this organization meeting tomorrow, this jamboree of religion.
Look, the American Family Association here, he has a talk show on the American Family Association. Look, in terms of Barry saying that this is fringe, the Southern Baptists are the largest Protestant denomination, 18 million Americans. Are you saying they're all fringe? And Barry, if you had done your homework, you would know that Jewish people have spoken in favor of this. Yes, it's open to everybody, but it is also a overtly Christian event where people are coming with an Orthodox
Well, why is it
Tony?
Why is it an overtly Christian event sponsored by the governor of the state of Texas? The Lone Star State is a state. It is not a church. Last time I checked.
Barry. Not a single dollar of taxpayer money is being spent in this. This has all been funded by the private sector, over $2 million. And let me ask you, Barry, would you come to a prayer event? I mean, would you sponsor
let me moderate this. You can't moderate, Tony. I welcome you here to be a guest moderator. Let's take a look at Reverend John Hagee. This guy hates Catholics. His most controversial statements in the past have been he called the Catholic Church the great whore. That's part of the diversity here tomorrow. He called Hurricane Katrina God's judgment or punishment of New Orleans. He said America has become a pagan society. Let's look at this collage of voices that are going to be represented. Here's a montage, I should say, of controversial comments from Brian Fisher, a spokesman for the group sponsoring the event, Mike Bickle, the International House of Prayer, and John Benefiel, who's head of Heartland Apostolic Prayer Network, each of which will be participating in tomorrow's event. Let's listen to this montage of voices, and then Tony can respond.
I believe that homosexuals are morally disqualified from holding public office. Why? Because they are engaging in sexually aberrant behavior.
You know, there's a statue in New York Harbor called the Statue of Liberty. You know where we got it from? French Freemasons. Listen, folks, that is an idol, a demonic idol, right there in the middle of New York Harbor.
The heart of Babylon is preparing the nations to receive the Antichrist. I believe that one of the main pastors as a forerunner to the harlot movement, it's not the harlot movement yet, it's Oprah. A classy woman, a cool woman, a charming woman, but has a spirit of deception, and she is one of the clear pastors, forerunners to the harlot movement.
Tony, the harlot of Babylon is Oprah Winfrey. The Statue of Liberty is the demonic statue. These people don't sound like Christians to me. Are they to you?
Well, look. I don't, as I said before, not everybody that's on that platform agrees with what others have said or what they hold to believe, but there is one unifying factor that brings people there tomorrow, and it's what you will see. It is a prayer for our nation, a prayer for this state and for other states, for God to move in this country. And there's the unifying element is the Orthodox view from Christianity that Jesus Christ is the means of salvation, and He is the means to communicate with the Father. Therefore, we're having a Christian event because in the pluralistic events that Barry would sponsor, you can't pray in Jesus' name. He wants a public sector, a public square that's devoid of Christianity and some kind of nebulous, I feel myself holy religion. This is clearly Christian.
Yeah, no, actually, that's not. In fact, one of the speeches. Tony, you know, of course, that we are holding. Yeah, we're holding an alternative event, a family, faith, and freedom event tonight at a largely African-American Baptist church here in Houston. It is diverse. There will be humanists. There will be presentations from the Muslim and Jewish community. Why? Because we think inclusiveness is the American way. It's the American principle. It's what the Constitution requires that governors be neutral on these matters. Now, Tony, wait a second.
No.
You and I both get invited to speak to large numbers of people, big events. Are you telling me you didn't look into the background of any of these people, or you just cut them a break even though they said these outlandish things? Come on.
Is this going to help, Tony? Is this going to help?
I said I don't agree with these things.
Do you support Rick Perry for governor, for president? Tony, I got to get to the politics. Do you think Rick Perry would be a good presidential candidate?
I think he has the makings of a presidential candidate. But let me just say what Barry's talking about. He wants elected officials to check their personal religious convictions at the door. Nothing in the Constitution says that. In fact, it's to the contrary.
You know, it's interesting that John Kennedy went to. Let me make a point here. Barry, John Kennedy went to Houston to meet with the Protestant ministers of Houston and said he was going to keep his religion apart from his public duties as president and his responsibilities to the Constitution. Do you think Rick Perry's doing that tomorrow, saying that he's going to keep his religion separate from his constitutional duties?
No, he's merging the two and trying to act like the job description for governor of Texas is find a way to bring everyone from San Antonio to Dallas to Jesus. That is not part of the job description. I read what his job duties are. That is not one of them. And Tony Perkins, I got to say again, this idea that somehow this is decoupled from politics, I think is nonsense. Governor Perry, if he jumps into this race, is already jumping into a race filled with people, two of whom, at least Michelle Bachmann and Newt Gingrich, who have suggested God has already chosen them to run. He's got to show that he's even holier than they are. Whether this is successful or not, I'll tell you, if he doesn't fill up half of those seats in that stadium tomorrow, this will be a political disaster, whatever he has in mind.
I don't think even you, Barry, you can't read the mind of Barry. I invite you to come and fill up one of those chairs. Thank you very much, Tony Perkins. Thank you, Barry Lynn.